Hello, good afternoon, Lex, Jones, and Liam. Liam, you've got your surname. How do you pronounce it?
Hill.
And why we have Pais? Pais?
Oh, it's like nickname, internet handle kind of thing, which I've been going by since I was about 16 and now I'm 33. It feels a bit weird, but some people know me by that name, so kind of stuck with it.
I was wondering because if I read this in Spanish, Pais means country.
I'm aware of that. Occasionally somebody finds the word pays written on something Spanish and sends it to me. So,
There's one.
That's quite a tradition of particularly northern England, though, is that you'll get a nickname as like a child or a teenager, and then it just sticks forever, long past the point where it makes any sense. So you'll end up with the point at the point where nobody that you know now understands why that's your nickname because it was an origin from like 25 years ago.
No, I was wondering if it was like you had the parents from different countries and you have two surnames, because in Spain we have the two surnames. Or if it was a middle name, it would be a base for a middle name. But hey, I'm the foreigner, so I'm open up to anything.
yeah, it's nothing that interesting. Sorry.
It's a nickname, so yeah, I guess so. And also Liam is a name we use in Spain as well. So maybe now it's become more international. But I was thinking, well, is there a connection? Is there a Spanish connection there? Maybe. So,
No, there's no Spanish connection at all actually to me. Don't have any Spanish family or anything like that.
oh, okay. Well, now you have a Spanish connection somehow. Yeah.
Nice to meet you.
So thank you very much for being here today in Alice in Gothic Land. This is the session talking to the author, and now it's talking to the author and the illustrator. We had a session talking to the author and the publisher, the mind behind her. That was with Tracy and Justin Park, and now we have the other variety with the illustrator. We were saying before that we never really give the person illustrating books the covers, the inside of his pocket, like in this case. We don't give enough credit, I think, and this is one of the reasons why I have invited you. Thanks to Lex, because he kind of mentioned it. I thought, oh, that's such an obvious thing to do as well, So, how did you two meet, actually?
We've got a mutual friend called Casey. That's how we know each other, isn't it, Alex?
Yeah,
Sure.
I think we met through Casey. Yeah, I can't physically remember the first time I'd literally met you, but I know that it was through Casey.
I can because I've got a photographic memory only relating to music stuff and nothing else.
Was it at a gig?
It was at that gig, which is the downstairs bar somewhere, and
Mulberry Tavern, perhaps in Sheffield.
Mulberry Tavern,
yes, yeah.
And you were there with Casey when I was behind the merch stand at a Silverjet gig, I think.
Yeah.
So that's how I met you.
Yeah, because Liam is also in a rock band, and I go to see a lot of not at the moment, but normally I go to see quite a lot of live music and stuff. And one of my best friends, who's also one of Liam's best friends, is also in a band. So we kind of met through a gig that Liam was playing. And I went there, and yeah, so met through that.
So it goes back a few years now.
Yeah, I think so. At least 5 or 6 years, isn't it?
Yeah, I reckon that.
Yeah.
So how did the idea of writing and illustrating this wonderful book came about? I'm just going to show it now.
Well, I had the idea of doing a children's book based on the work of H.P. Lovecraft. It sort of started as a joke, but then the more I thought about it, the more I thought I could actually make a real thing out of this. But I was quite keen that I didn't want it to be too childish, in the sense that there are already books about Cthulhu which are very, very childish and aimed at really young children, which is fine. But I didn't want mine to be overly cutesy or silly or anything. I wanted it to be a legitimate story with genuine heart and emotion to it. But yeah, for children and based around the works of Lovecraft. So I just started writing it really to see if I could do it. And then I sent it out to a few people and I got a really good response. But then I came up with the idea of I wanted it to be illustrated. So like at least one image per chapter. And I knew Liam also did illustration and I really liked his style from the other work that I'd seen. So we sort of got in touch and asked if he could do it, basically.
What do you think, Liam, when he first proposed this idea to you?
I do say yes to a lot of things that Lex offers. So normally I'm like, oh yeah, that sounds really fun. I'll definitely do that. I'll definitely get on it. That'll be like my main priority. And then I realize I've got lots of other commitments and I can actually put like an hour in every 2 weeks. And so yeah, so always at first when someone offers to do something, and I've done a few things with Lex since. This is the first one. Like it starts off like, I'd love to do that. That's great. And then the rest of the relationship is, I'm so sorry I've not done what I told you to do for a few months.
So how does it work when you're working? So you write the story and then you put illustrations, or are you writing another chapter and then Liam, you look at that chapter and you come up with ideas? How did that? Because it should be difficult to. Well, I think.
Yeah. Well, I'd actually finished the book before I decided it wanted illustrating. So what I did is I found an image that I thought was representative of each chapter. So that I thought for each chapter, if there's one image from this chapter that will stay in your head, that is the image that I wanted to be on the first page. So like there is the image which is on the front cover, which is my favorite one, where Howard is stood on the Ferris wheel and Ulu is stood next to him and they're both looking out to sea. And that is a very important image in the whole book really, but particularly in that chapter, it's a very poignant image. It's got a lot of emotion to it. And I think that is the image you will be left with from that chapter. So that's why I picked that image. So for every chapter, I picked the image that I thought would sort of sum that chapter up, if you like. And I described those to Liam and then sort of sent them off and he went from there.
How long did it take you, Liam, to produce all these illustrations?
Well, like I said, I always struggle time management wise. So what were it like? It was like 6 months.
It was about 6 months, yeah. But I don't think that's bad really, because like if you were commissioning an artist who you weren't friends with, you would expect it to take about that long. You're not expecting a 2-week turnaround for something like this because everyone's got other projects on as well. There's very few creative people who only do that and don't also have a day job. So I think that was a perfectly reasonable turnaround, to be honest.
Oh, brilliant. So what made you decide to want to work together? Was it when you say, well, I've got this idea, was it just as exciting for both? How did it happen?
Go on, Max.
I'm not sorry, my cat's just decided to join us.
He's lovely. He's lovely.
She'll not stop meowing if I didn't let her in, so it'd come out on the video. So I thought I'd just have to let her in.
I've got 2 cats myself, and now we've just what is the name now? We just I can't think of the word in English. We found a bird that fell off the nest the other day.
All right.
We live in a house, and they tend to have look. This is my cat. And this bird landed on the ground and we caught it, and now we just put it on a cage outside. It's a sparrow, a little sparrow fell off the nest, and now I've got the cats looking out the window.
Yeah, of course.
For it. He flew away yesterday and we thought that's it, escape. Now he's been fed for a week like a baby, he's been fed and now he's happy, and he came back asking for more food, so now he's in the cage. And no, but I love pets and it's great. And yes, they have their own personalities and they have to be in their way.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Right, sorry. So yeah, going back to
what was your question? Sorry.
I think we kind of answered you've answered that before. But we'll talk about what made you write the book and what made you decide you wanted to work together. Were you worried at some point if it was going to work or not? Because when sometimes you have a friend and then you work together with a friend, that sometimes doesn't happen.
I know what you mean. That wasn't a concern for me because I've seen Liam's output and how good it is and how much of it he does. So I know that he's got a good work ethic. So I didn't have a problem with that. I mean, I do have friends who, exactly like you just said, I'm very good friends with them, but I wouldn't work with them because I know that their work ethic is vastly different to mine. And I would constantly be, I'd end up doing most of the work, or I'd be waiting for them, or things would be delayed, or they just don't work the same way I do. So there are friends who, as much as I love them as a friend, I just absolutely wouldn't want to work on a project with them. But I already knew that wasn't going to be an issue with Liam.
From my point of view, it's a bit if you're doing like sort of thing, well, because this was Lex's project, so I was essentially kind of like working for him, and I feel like because I'm his friend, if I had done something that he maybe hated, it's harder for him to say I hate this. You know what I mean? Although there was one big change that I remember Lex wanted, and I was like really reluctant, which was that the sky was pink on the original cover. And I was like, pink and green, and they were my favourite colour scheme at the time. And now I actually agree that maybe the sky should have been sky coloured.
It's just the tone of it wasn't right, pink.
Yeah.
It needs to have that slightly melancholy feel to it, which the book does, and I think that just looks great.
At the time, it was my pink and green phase. Everything was pink and green. Now everything's purple and pink.
I think it's great. I think it's lovely. I've noticed on your Twitter you've got a lot of pink now. You say that. Yeah. But no, it's true. I think it's great. I mean, the choice of colors, for some reason, my website is looking great. I don't know why. I think it combines very well with other colors, and it makes the other colors stand out in your writing and everything. And then we have to show the back, obviously.
Yeah.
It's got this guy, and also we have to do promotion to our friends. Justin, since a horror company. And yeah, I mean, the choice. But it's true, it's hard sometimes. Maybe you don't like something, or even a paragraph, not necessarily just the illustration, but something that you've written and you're reading this story too. You're the illustrator, but you're reading it too. So you might be thinking, oh, I'm not sure about that. Or did you influence Lex in any of the parts of the story? I say, I don't quite like that, or you just accepted the story as it was. And
yeah. Oh, well, I mean, it's Lex's story. I didn't feel like it was any part of my job to critique it. Actually, to be fair, I wouldn't anyway. I really enjoy it. It's a really good story. Like when you're reading stuff like a friend's done as well, like maybe you are worried about how you're going to judge it and stuff, and it's always a relief when you read it and you're like, oh, actually, I really like this.
Yeah. That's the same for music, though. Like whenever one of your friends tells you that they're in a band and asks if you want to come and see them, you always have that thing of, oh God, what if they're really bad? Because they're going to ask you and you're going to have to say, So thankfully Liam's band is great. Both of them that I've seen him in fact, and so is our mutual friend Casey's band. But yeah, it is difficult, particularly for me, because I struggle to say things if I don't think that they're true. Yeah. So I'm actually autistic, which means that I'm very honest whether I want to be or not. I find it like most people have this kind of secondary layer where they can filter things through, and if they don't necessarily believe it, they can still say it to try and be nice. Whereas being autistic, I kind of lack that. So I'm like always honest, whether it's the nicest thing to be or not. I can't really help it. My brain just does that. You ask me if I like something. If I don't, I'm just going to say no. And then afterwards I can think, oh, that might have been a bit mean. But at the time, I just don't have that additional layer. It just comes straight out, because everything's a binary question. Everything's like a maths question. If you ask me what's 2 + 2, I will say 4. There's no hesitation there. That's the answer. So that's what I'm going to say. And everything is like that with me. So if I've got a friend's project that isn't very good, it's very difficult for me to try and not say that. So I totally understand that, so I'm glad that Liam did like it, because I do understand that struggle of that.
Yeah, no, I'm a bit like you. I'm truly honest, and yes, as you grow older, then you kind of still say what you think, but maybe in a different way. Sometimes how you say things too. When you're younger, you're kind of no, and then, now we think, I think constructive criticism, and it's always nice, because you don't have to like things. If you don't like it, you have your argument, you can just say it, and that's fine. But yeah, I can see that this is what I was asking, because of this tension. Sometimes people fall out because of taste and like. So It's not an easy thing. Yeah, it's great. Okay, so going back to the book, which chapter did you find most challenging to write next?
Probably the first one or two, to be honest, because I mean, starting a book is always quite difficult. It's knowing how to start it, knowing where to start it, because I always like my characters, whether it's a short story or a full-length book, I always like my characters to feel as if they already exist. I don't like you to feel as if those characters only exist from page one. So like you jump in on these characters, and let's say the very first page, that what's happening there takes place on a Wednesday morning, for instance. I want it to feel that those characters were also here on Tuesday. You just haven't seen them. You know, I want them to feel full and rich, and like their world already exists and you're just jumping into it at a certain point. So it's very difficult to know how far back do you go? Where do you start explaining this? So with this story, I wanted to introduce Howard and his life and his family and all the very normal parts of that before the unusual stuff starts happening. So I think there's like 2 chapters even before the Black Reef arrives. So that was difficult to write because, particularly with it being a children's book, it is important to establish these characters, but you don't want it to be boring. So it's finding that balance of, okay, the fantastical elements aren't going to come in yet, but at the same time, what is happening needs to be engaging, and you need to care about these characters. So that was the trickiest part for me to sort of get right.
Yeah, I can see it sometimes. For you, Liam, was it like a part that was more challenging for you to draw, for example, or to come up with?
There's definitely things that are difficult to draw that Lex has asked me to do, and it's not being like a movable thing. Like drawing a carousel is not particularly easy. Drawing the big wheel as well. Basically anything fairground related. I've told Lex in a recent project that I'm never going to draw a horse again. He wanted me to draw a horse and cart for a character. I was like, no, it's a bike. Yeah, I'm not drawing a horse.
See one. So, for example, that one that wasn't very challenging, I suppose, because the reef and.
Yeah, we say it wasn't challenging, that one.
Yeah. Well, did you find that one challenging, or?
That's a particularly easy one. That I had a bit of a flick through yesterday, just looking at my pictures, because it's been quite a while since I drew them, and that was actually one that I was like, it's really simple, but I was like, that's a good picture. That if I drew that today, I'd draw it exactly like that.
So, can you remember the one that you might have found more challenging?
There's definitely one of him on a carousel.
There is one on a horse, yeah, on the carousel on the horse. I think it might be the first
or the second one. It might be right at the end.
Yeah. I think it's near the beginning. I think it's one of the first ones. He's on like a pink coloured horse.
You like pink? Yes, that's a one actually. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. See, there's not much horse. There's not much horse in the picture. That's how I got around it.
Yeah, we one of the projects we're working on at the moment is like a comic strip, which I'm writing and Liam's illustrating, and it's set in Victorian times. Oh. So at one point there was a horse and carriage, and Liam came back to me and said, "Could we not have a horse and carriage?"
Well, I think one of the kids, I can't remember who it was, commented on the horse, and I think the comment was, "Oh, but it looks alive. Why has it got a stick through it?" I'm like, "Well, it's a carousel." Yeah. I was like, "Where is the carousel?" You know, it's like, "Yeah, but it looks sad." Like, so someone actually paid attention to this horse. So that means that somehow what you did here, you kind of transmitted through your work that there might have been some challenge for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing what kids can see sometimes.
What I'll do next time is I'll just photocopy a picture of a horse and I'll just stick that in, so it'll be like a mixed media piece, and I'll just draw a little guy on top of it.
But it's great. I mean, it goes with your style. I think I don't find any problems, but it's just about kids pay attention to. You know, the one that caught my attention was let me see if I should have looked for this before. This one when it it's in the water. Sorry, when he's down in the water and he turns into this thing that he can swim like a fish, and I thought, wow, now he's a cyclop. And it was good. No, it's like, wow, they changed. I don't know why it caught my attention, that one. Was this a particularly, or is there a story behind this one that you can tell us? Or
that I mean, that kind of style of creature is almost a default thing that I like to draw, like kind of scaly fish people with like bulging eyes on the side. I'm doing a comic at the moment called The Exchange, and there's a character called Finsbard on it, and that's a kind of similar character. And I do a comic called Cobweb Galaxy, and the captain of the ship, Cromwell Jones, she's got big eyes like that, and so
they are the eyes. They are the eyes. Imagine how I saw these. I thought they were ears.
Oh,
yeah. Because I thought that was just one eye. This was to you the cyclop, but it's not. It's just
it's so weird how people interpret stuff differently, because I'm very much in my own world. Like I know how my stupid character's supposed to look and things, and so maybe I've not explained that properly and stuff. It's stuff like I don't really draw. I've started getting working on like more human looking things, but for years I never drew hands. I just drew like upside down W's kind of, because I like that kind of thing, and I suppose I never really think that even might not even look like a hand to somebody else. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but there are a lot of cartoons you see. I don't know which is the one that's got like 3 fingers. I can't remember, but there are cartoons and puppets out there that just got 3 or 2.
Yeah.
Kids pay attention to that. They go, "What was the finger? What's with the finger?" And but I think they can tell you lifestyle of this, because there's so many different styles. I can't remember, but yeah, there are some out there that they do have. Well, imagine if you think about the minions, for example, just one eye. There's similar things. So yeah, no, it's great. Okay, do you have a favorite scene or a moment when you thought, yeah, I really enjoyed that. I enjoyed writing this, and I've enjoyed really drawing it. Or for you, was that the whole thing was really great?
I did enjoy writing the scene that's on the front cover, because that was like the first image in my mind, really. Okay. So to actually get to that point in the story and write it was sort of really exciting. Like sometimes it is tempting, if you've got one particular scene in your head, it is sometimes tempting to write that first, even if it's not the first scene, and then go back. But I try and avoid doing that, because I feel like then everything's got to lead up to that scene, and then it feels a bit forced. And I think you sometimes spot things like that on films, where there's like a fight scene or something that just doesn't quite fit, and you can tell that they had the idea for that first, and then it doesn't quite gel. So I like to try and include all the scenes that I've envisioned, but I would rather write in order, and then if they naturally occur, then great, but if they don't, I don't want to force them in there. So because of that, I didn't get to that scene until quite late in the book, so it was really enjoyable that it did fit in, and that I could do it the way I wanted to.
All right.
Can I ask Lex a question?
Yeah.
So how long does it take you to write this book? I mean, I know it's like your first kid's book. So presumably, it's simpler, like sentences. It's shorter.
Yeah.
It's like more to the point and things. Does it take significantly less time to write, or does it take the same amount because you got to really think about the few words that you're putting in?
It's actually a little bit. Probably, well, I mean, lengthwise, you've got to bear in mind that it's not as long as a full-length novel that I've written. So it didn't take as long as a normal book would anyway. But with regards to the sentence structure and everything being simpler, that actually took longer than normal, because what I had to do is basically just the first draft, I just wrote the story. Just because I'm a big believer in that. Just get it down. Just get it written down to start with, so you've got your template. And then it was on the second draft where I went through and actually amended the writing style so that it was, suitable for children, and the syntax I was using and the sentence structure and how long the paragraphs were and everything like that. I didn't worry about that in the first draft. So that all came in the second one. So that was like an additional step that I wouldn't usually have to do if it was a book for adults. So it was actually a bit longer in that regard.
Right.
It's a great question, Liam. Yeah, because maybe I should have come up with that because I'm the language.
Sorry, I've not stolen the question.
No. Yeah, because it's like, it's obvious that there's a language thing here. Yeah, we're not thinking that it's for kids, so therefore the extra struggle, or as like you're saying, of having to adapt that. And at what point do you use certain vocabulary or not? That occurs to me a lot of times. How do people who make the books? I mean, I've been teaching kids for a long time, but how do they know when I've made my own material, thinking which sentences, which structures? I've got the guidance of what the curriculum says. But if I didn't have kids, I wouldn't have a clue. I have kids. I'm lucky. I can see how they speak, but you forget with time as well. So it's a very good question, because it's a difficult one. Is how do you know if it's for these ages? How do you have to structure these sentences? Which vocabulary, the length, the size of the writing as well, so they don't get tired. There are lots of elements there that we just take for granted, but they could actually make the kids stop reading.
Sure. Yeah.
So no, I mean, it's perfect. Yes, this is a really good question. I love it. Yeah. Okay. So for you to draw, Liam, we said about the wheel and all this was one of the difficult things, but well, I think we've answered that already. So I'm just going through my questions, and I think we're just going to repeat that. So let's go to the next one, so it doesn't make sense. So
did you have a favorite one to draw, Liam? Actually, did you have a favorite one?
It was probably that fish man, to be honest.
Yeah,
like the deep one version of Howard, because like I like I said before, that is kind of sort of thing I like to draw. But I also Howard and his mum on the reef was a pretty cool one, because at the time I
love that one.
I tried to make the reef look kind of, what's the word look practically, like non-Euclidean.
Cyclopean, is it?
Yeah.
That's the word you sometimes use. Yeah.
So I tried to just give a hint of that it doesn't quite work.
It does, yeah. That's such a beautiful image, that one, where they're stood looking out to sea and there's the rain and everything, and it's really, that was one of the first ones that I shared before the book came out, actually. Yeah, that one. Yeah.
Very nice. Yeah, that's lovely. Yeah. Right. So you have some that maybe you've got more like in your heart, like, oh, that was like really nice. And so, well, I also suppose they're like your babies, and your drawings, your production at the end of the day, your babies, and you love them for different reasons.
Yeah, well, the thing is with drawings, like, I'm going to sound really pretentious here. I'm going to sound like a real like artiste, like, but it's almost as if like every time you do something, you improve. So like every time like I draw something, I get a bit better at like whatever I did, my technique, like whatever. I've just completely stumbled over my words. I'm struggling to talk at the moment. So yeah, you improve whatever style you're working on. So that means every picture that I draw is now then a little bit worse what I can do now. So every time I do a picture, I'm a little bit like, oh yeah, that's really good, that, or I can look back on it and be like, oh, that was a good idea that I did that. But every single picture, even one that I drew yesterday, I could look at it now and go, oh, I reckon I could do that better. So there's like, rather than it being my babies, there's a little bit like, I could have done that better. I could have made that line smoother. Everything's a little bit too straight or stood up, or the framing could be a little bit better. So it's with that with everything. Like I think with music as well. The second I finish a song, and we've paid hundreds to finish it and stuff, I'm like, mispronounce that word there. The whole thing's rubbish. Get rid of it. No, I'm exaggerating, obviously, for effect. I'm not like looking through and being like, oh, this is terrible, I hate it, or anything. But it is, when I look back at anything that I've done, the main thought in my mind is like, how could I have done this better today?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
I feel like I've gone off from the question a little
No,
bit.
that is
No,
knowledge, yeah.
it's a good answer to that question as well. Yeah, because I think if you go back now to the writing process, it's the same. If you know, some writers get obsessed with editing because it's never perfect, and therefore you will never publish. And I'm a bit that way. I keep, because it's not my second. I write in English because it's my second language, so it's never as good as it could be. But then in this sense, I'm never gonna write it.
Yeah.
Because it's never gonna be perfect. But for any writer and for any artist, really, I suppose is a thing that you can get very obsessed about producing the perfect piece, and then you will never release it.
Yeah.
Or you just like, okay, control that a bit and well, take it as part of the learning process. So for you, let's just like for Liam, that you have this feeling, or you just accept, oh, this time it's come out this way, next time I'll produce something different.
It depends what it is, really. Like, there's some things which I like. This book particularly, I don't think I could have done it any better, because I've never written anything like it since. I will be doing a second one, but I've not got to it yet. But there are some things like for instance, I'm working on a series of books at the moment, like an adult series of books, and I'm currently writing like the third one. If I go back and read the first one now, I think, oh, I could have done that a bit better, because I'm still working with these characters. I'm still refining them. So it's like watching a television series. And if you watch a character in the fourth season and how well-rounded and developed they are, and then you go back and watch the first season and they seem really one-dimensional and flat because the people writing the characters haven't quite got used to them yet. The actors playing the character hasn't quite got used to them yet. So they seem much fuller and richer by the fourth season. So it's kind of the same with the book series. You go back to the first one and think, oh, I could have wrote that better.
Yeah, so I suppose the audience kind of will not pick on that because they know that's the normal process.
Yeah.
So in a way, it's not something to worry about too much, I guess.
No, you can torture yourself with it, and like you said, you can never leave a project if you get too obsessed with it.
Yeah. So have you written? Yeah, well, you said now that you're writing other stuff now, but other than fiction, I suppose for Liam it's difficult because what would you call your drawings? Are they fiction, fantasy? What would be the label? Because I'm not familiarized with the illustration side of things.
I mean, I don't really have to give them a literary label like fiction or something. I do only really draw fiction. I do, like, one of my biggest things that stresses me out is if somebody's like, oh, draw a picture of me. I'm like, oh, what if I highlight a feature that you don't like about yourself? And then if I don't do that feature, what if they're like, why haven't you put my big nose in it? What's wrong with it? You know what I mean? It's very difficult to draw a real person, so that's why I kind of just draw.
It's a careful balancing act, that, isn't it, with anything like that? Yeah, because you think, do I, like if someone's got a lazy eye or something, you think, do I just pretend that they haven't? But then that's kind of insulting because I'm not drawing them. But I mean, you could just go like really just exaggerate it, just draw it as like the most obvious lazy eye that you've ever seen. It's like not a sensitive thing, but yeah, that is got to be difficult with regards to how you address this, or do you not? You've done some pictures of me. I've never been offended by them.
No.
Yeah, I think, was that not my was it the Patreon or something I did? When I did
you did. Yeah, you've done one of me for that, but then there's the one of us, the two of us, which you did for Detective Vampire.
To be fair, that one I got to draw as both really horrible because I know you wouldn't care, and and I can get to be horrible to myself. That's fine. So that's why I was really grotesque. So yeah, me and Lex have done a comic that you mentioned before called Detective Vampire, and in the back of it, I did kind of Lex as the character Detective Vampire and me as the the thrall of him, Bonesworth. So yeah, I could maybe be quite mean with us because I know that you won't be offended. I did actually run it past you first. I said I've got an idea for something. I don't want to make sure didn't send it over, and you were like, "Oh my god, is that what you think of me?"
But that's really cool as well, because then you can like you step into each other's worlds in different ways. It's kind of nice,
It's weird that me and Lex have done, I think, 3 different things together, and
Mm.
they've all been like not any of them have been the same setup.
No,
So like
no.
Old One in the Sea, me and Lex wrote it, gave me the brief, I drew it. Then Lex did something in like my world, so my Cobweb Galaxy comic. Lex wrote like a prose like diary of one of the characters, and then I did some illustrations for it. And then this other one we've done, like Lex wrote a comic, I drew the comic. So everything we've done has not been same format at all, really, has it?
No, they've been very different setup for all 3 of them, but it's nice. I like to be able to. It's like a good working method, if you like, in that like I'm not particular about edits, so if I mean ultimately I want any work of mine to be the best it can be when it goes out. So if an editor or whether it's Liam, like on the comics or anything, wants to change something, as long as it's not like a drastic change that completely changes what I'd envisioned, I don't really mind. I'm not that particular about moving sentences around or swapping a word or little things like that. It doesn't really matter to me.
With Detective Vampire, I think I had to cut out, not a lot, but I had to cut out a fair amount of text just because I struggled to fit it in the boxes.
Yeah, because with a comic, you've got that limitation of the boxes, haven't you? And everything's got to fit on the page.
And the first few, we tried to make them 1 pages, and sometimes they'd be like character explaining something or doing something that really said something really enriching the character, like because they had specific voices and stuff, and you didn't want to be putting like slang in Detective Vampire's voice because he's supposed to be quite a bit of a cad, isn't he? He's supposed to be a bit of a so you struggled to cut that stuff down because you wanted them to get the feel of him saying long, overly fancy sentences.
Yes, yeah.
There's a difference, as you said, it's a different space. So you have the limitations, but then you have to fit the personality of the character and what you want to say. So again, the challenge of writing certain amount of words in a certain amount of space is like writing a story for kids in a way, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Because it's like we have to make it find the word that is concise, that is it says a lot of things, and it's probably a lot more challenging doing a comic than writing a book because you've got more space to write a book.
Yeah, it's a whole new consideration, really. I can't just write the story and that's it. I've got to tell a story that can fit into 6 or 8 boxes on 1 page with, and it's still got to have a start, middle, and end like any other story. Although what we decided quite early on with these, because they're very silly stories, they're very humorous, they're not designed to be serious. So quite often the ending is just stupid. It's like it doesn't wrap up the story. It's just stupid and just leaves you thinking, oh, okay, is there any more to that or not? And so that sort of helps with wrapping it up because you don't have to worry about it so much, but you still need to establish what's going on, who does it involve, what's people's motivations here. So it's still quite difficult to fit that into sort of 6 or 8 boxes of text and speech bubbles while still leaving room for the pictures, which is arguably the main thing in a comic. The pictures count for more than the words do, really.
I'm not sure about that because I think when a lot of people read comics, they just read the word bubbles and I just don't spend any time on the pictures.
Maybe, yeah. You don't know. Yeah, that's true. So have you written anything other than fiction, Lex, or are you planning on writing something?
Well, I also sometimes write for like different websites, like book reviews on horror blogs and that kind of thing. I sometimes get invited to do that sort of thing, and occasionally I will do that. But mostly no, I've got no interest in writing a non-fiction book or anything because I've got it. To me, writing's an exercise. It's an enjoyable exercise. It's something that I do because I just want to sit and write. As soon as I've got to have textbooks and keep everything factual, I've just given myself homework.
Yes.
So why do I want to do that? I want to write something that I want to write for the fun of it.
Is that why at least your work that I've read tends to exist in like a fictional its own universe. You don't
Yeah.
like say like, oh, this like what you call it, Old One in the Sea. That's what you call it. It's what we're talking about. Old One in the Sea. I mean, that doesn't say anywhere throughout it that it's set in space, does it?
Sure.
And so that
It's
way you don't have to go down to Scarborough and be like, oh wait, the big wheel isn't anywhere near the sea.
exactly, because there are always those people, right? Like the classic example of this is there was a TV drama a few years ago that was set about, it was a BBC thing, and it was set on the events leading up to John F. Kennedy being assassinated. So it was like in the few days leading up to it. And on one of the episodes, the characters were outside in the street talking about something, and it was raining and they had umbrellas. And one of the criticisms that got on Twitter was that it wasn't raining in Dallas on that day in 1966. And this is what I mean. And just like Liam said, you will always get these people who say the Ferris wheel isn't on the left-hand side in Scarborough, it's on the right-hand side. So if you have a real place, you've got to be so careful with all of this stuff, because there are people who've got nothing better to do than, so just setting it in a fictional, even if it's a real place, like, yes, it is London, but it's a fictional version of London where there might be streets that don't actually exist. Or, so, I'm not worried about, did these streets in London in 1865 have gas lanterns, or were they still lit by a wick or whatever? I don't want to be that specific, because you end up spending months researching things that are going to appear in one sentence in the book, just for the sake of pedantry, really.
Well, no, but you're right. I mean, I'm finding myself writing this story, excuse me, and I'm thinking, oh, I've got the story in my head and it should be dead straightforward because it's in my head, it's been there for a long time. And then I'm having that problem that you just mentioned is, well, but this character is Victorian, and I need to describe the carriage where the coffin was taken, and I'm looking into carriages now. So yeah, I'm giving myself a hell of a lot of homework, because that, even though it's fiction, is an element from reality from a specific period of time. But I suppose it depends how you take it, because I'm finding it interesting because I'm discovering things. So
yeah, I mean, you've got to treat your audience with respect. You can't have it set in Victorian times and then have your character get a laptop out, obviously. But I mean, but what I'm saying is that, like, if you've said, oh, he got into a carriage and described the carriage and it was a particular type of carriage, but actually in the real world, that particular type of carriage didn't exist until 2 years later, I don't think that matters. That's what I'm saying. I think you can, there's a degree of flexible reality when it comes to something like that.
I did see on Twitter recently that somebody, I think it was for a comic, and it was like a pirate ship or a naval thing, and somebody did draw his whole boat, and boats hard with all the different rigging and stuff, and the editor was like, actually, that didn't exist for like another 5 years, or it was a really short amount of time.
Does it matter for that?
Redraw this boat, make it make it the correct one.
Yeah, so I think unless you're writing a specific account of an actual event, in which case you might want to be more careful with things like that. But again, if it's set in a version of this time period and this city, it doesn't have to. I mean, for a start, the Victorian story that I've been doing, it's full of ghosts and vampires and things that aren't real anyway. So it's clearly not our version of Victorian London, because those things didn't exist in our version. So maybe in my version of Victorian London, you did get street lamps 2 years earlier than you did in our reality. It's you don't have. I don't think you have to worry too much about that sort of thing.
Well, we need to have a chat after these, because now you're doing something I'm doing. Well, same area, same period of time. And it'd be quite interesting to see elements I have not seen, and then we might be able to tell you, we might be able to exchange information, maybe.
Sure, yeah.
So I'm very intrigued now. I'm into the ghostly thing and all that.
Well, like this is where you can go wrong with this, is because one of my short stories that got published in my book of short stories it's set on a boat. It's set in about 1820, and it's two fishermen on a small boat. Not a rowing boat, like an actual fisherman's boat, that sail out to Iceland. because there you go. Liam's got it. It's the
He's
the
got it.
first one. It's the first story, Liam. So, the entire story is set on this boat. So I wanted to be keen to get the terminology right of the boat. I didn't want to be, using the wrong term. So I spent ages learning what you call the different sails, the different masts, the different levers, and all that kind of thing, and researching this and what you would have on that sized boat and what type of, all of that. And the editor took all of it out because it wasn't relevant. So that's the kind of trap you can fall into. You spend ages researching something and then it's not even that important.
So after you wrote a whole story just so you could use the word poop deck, it wasn't allowed.
Yeah, it wasn't even necessary. There's actually been, I don't know if either of you like old horror radio plays, like from the 1940s, where you'd have people doing voices and sound effects and all that kind of thing. Somebody has done one of those of that story. And it's available for free on the internet, and it's them as an actor doing the voices, and they've got like the noise of the sea and the creaking ship, and it's everything. It's brilliant. It's really good. I was really excited to hear it. I kept listening to it and forgetting that it was my story. It was.
Send us the link, because then I will post everything on the channel. And then if anybody's interested, then obviously it's not just when I interview, I just like people to have interest.
Just send me a message and remind me, and I'll get you the link. Yeah.
And for Liam, the same. You've been telling about these vampire things. I've not really looked. I've seen some of your work, but I have to admit I've not looked in depth. So I need now to look at these vampire cartoon things.
It's not out yet. We actually finished it a little bit back. A 24-page comic.
Yeah.
But it's we were hoping to get this distribution deal with it, but we're not sure what's going on with that yet. So.
Is he still looking at that at the moment?
I don't know if this is a conversation, but basically everything he said is so positive, and then I'm like, and he's like,
is it happening?
Oh yeah, no, we definitely love it. Yeah, it's great. Then 2 months later, and he's like, yeah, is it ready? It's like, yeah, it's ready. Okay, you know what I mean? So
yeah.
Oh, when that's out, let me know as well, because I have kids in my classes that they don't all like novels or books. Some of them are more like into comics. So that might be a good idea to get a different format of reading for those. And now that I know who you are and the connection, so I will be delighted to show and to promote this as well. If there's not a lot of swearing, of course, like you would say.
I don't think there is. I think we kept it out, didn't we, for that reason?
There's a lot of violence in it, though. But
it's cartoon violence, isn't it?
It's like cartoon violence, but it's still an exposed brain. Like that. So
18 plus, maybe for 18 plus kids, maybe.
I'd say it's a PG, because like my drawings are super simple and gooey anyway, and like it is like silly. It's not like anyone's gonna look at it and be horrified.
No, it's nothing graphic. It's very, very cartoony artwork, isn't it?
More the humor behind it. That's just the humor.
It's if you're happy with Itchy and Scratchy on The Simpsons, then I'm sure it's fine.
yeah. But so anything that you have, where can we find you? Well, I know that we're almost at the hour, and there are a lot of things I've not asked you, but where can we find you? Where can we find your work?
Well, me, I'm on Twitter under @LexHJones, and also if you just search for my name on Amazon, all my books are on there. You can get them in various bookshops, to be honest. I mean, in the UK, you can actually get them in physical bookshops as well as websites, but Amazon is sort of like the central place. So, I mean, if you have some sort of moral issue with buying from Amazon, which I do understand, you can always find the books on there and then get the name and go on a different website and buy them from there. If you prefer, that's fine. But Amazon has got them all listed together under my name because of the way it sets up its book pages, you see. So it's
and
probably the easiest.
Also find you in your social media. You will have Twitter.
Yeah, that's about the only one I use, really.
And for Liam?
I'm at High Green Dawn on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook. Facebook's got comics every couple of days, and Instagram and Twitter, they've got like more nonsense, just pictures I've drawn. monsters.
You also
stuff like
mentioned that you have Patreon, don't you? So if anybody's interested in helping you out and get into more specific products, you have also Patreon?
I don't know. I did have one, but and it was a bit more successful than I thought it was going to be. But I decided that because I had to make stuff exclusively for it, and then it'd be behind like a paywall. I actually kind of wanted everything I made to be able to be available like constantly. Because then I get more kudos from random strangers, which is all I really want.
Okay, no, that's good. So then for people, if they want to know more and to find you, then they can do, and that's awesome. I know it's the time, but I might ask you a last question.
That's okay. That's fine.
Yeah, I'm in no rush to go off.
Yeah, I have got to pick up Charlie from work, but I've got 5 minutes. Yeah, it's fine.
5 minutes, okay. 5 minutes. Let's see how many can we squeeze it. So, but if you remember, Lex, we did the interview with the kids, and that you said this phrase that you said that you don't really care about what is popular. So how does that work for your benefit? And the same for Liam, because I think it's a nice, deep, philosophical sentence. Because
Okay,
care about being popular.
Yeah, so what I was explaining with that, Liam, is that I don't worry about what's popular right now. I just write the stories that I want to write. And if I can sell them to someone, I can sell them. If I can't, I'll write something else. But I'm not going to look at detective crime fiction's popular at the moment, so I'm going to write one of them. You know, I don't do that. I just and the way that benefits me is because it keeps writing as a pleasurable thing for me rather than turning it into a job and just making it an effort to do and forcing myself to write something I don't want to write. So I would always rather just write what I want to write, regardless of whether or not that's currently the big thing. Because the other thing is the zeitgeist changes all the time. If you're constantly trying to catch up to it, you're always going to be like 2 years behind. You always see that, like something will come out like The Hunger Games, which is a young adult teen post-apocalyptic world thing. And then about 5 years after that, there was about 40 young adult series that are some teenage post-apocalyptic thing because they're all trying to catch up to what The Hunger Games has already done. And I just think, don't do that. You're embarrassing yourself. Just write something else. Just write your story. They've done that one. You tell a different story.
That's exactly what I was going to say. If you try to do what's popular, you'll always actually be catching the edge of the wave.
Exactly.
If you're doing something like, I suppose, like from me, my point of view, drawing, it's actually essentially instantly published. You know, I put stuff online, or at worst, I spend like a few months like doing a comic. But like music's the worst one. You get people who I've known and have spent their entire like musical careers like constantly reforming to what's popular, and by the time they've done their album in like a year and a half,
that isn't popular anymore.
Yeah, now it's all that.
Yeah,
messed up.
That's true. And maybe the last question, since what I like promoting is critical thinking, to help people with their communication skills, and through the fiction context, in my case through the Gothic, but it all falls in the fiction. What would be your message for young kids or for anyone, any type of audience that are in that moment where they think, well, I really like doing this, but I need a day job that really pays my bills, and they suppress the artist in them? What would you say to these kids?
Well, 90% of the creative people I know, probably more than 90%, including myself, including Liam, have day jobs as well, because you just don't make enough money from, there's a very, very small percentage of writers. I can't speak for illustrators, but for writers, the percentage of, if you walk into a bookshop and look at all the books on the wall, let's say there's 1,000 on there. There's probably about 20 names there who don't also have some sort of other source of income, because there's so many books now, and there's so many ways to get published, and there's so many, the book market is more saturated than it's ever been, which is brilliant, but it means that there's less money being directed to more people, if you know what I mean, because rather than having 500 published authors, you've got 50,000 published authors, so there's not as much money. So the chances of you being able to make enough money that is your sole income is very, very slim. So money should not be your reason to do it. you should do it because you want to do it, because you enjoy doing it, because you love hearing people say, oh, I read your book and I liked it, and this was my favorite bit or whatever. That, like when I was talking to the kids and they were, that kind of thing should be the reason why you do it. If it's not, then don't even bother, because if you're just chasing money, it's the wrong thing to go down, really. You might get lucky. Maybe somebody will make a film adaptation of it and you'll get loads of money from that. If you're lucky, that might happen. But it's wrong to be aiming for that, because the chances of it are very slim, and it's not a good source of motivation for anything creative, really.
That's true. Yeah.
I mean, I'd echo what Lex said. Like, rather than saying people, oh, give up your day job and work on your art, actually having a day job, if it's the right one, if it's not something that you've got to get up early and go to bed late for, is really helpful, because it means you can fund stuff you want. Like, I've got this excellent lighting thanks to my day job, which is why I look fantastic on webcam right now.
I wondered why you look like so.
But like, in all seriousness, stuff like, if I was trying to just earn money from drawing, I would not be able to do stuff like, I don't know, afford the tablet that I draw on and stuff like that. So especially like music stuff, because music's a right money hole. Like, having a day job actually helps me do more things that I want.
Yeah.
Because otherwise I'd be just scrimping and scraping, and it'd be a lot longer before I complete each project. You know what I mean?
Not only that, but you would be thinking about making something that's going to sell. So rather than just drawing or singing, or in my case, writing whatever you want to, you would be thinking about, this has got to pay my mortgage for the next 6 months. So I've got to write something that's going to sell, which might not be the same as something that I want to write. So you're taking the joy out of it. Yeah, you would.
That extra pressure, and I suppose by putting pressure, you are limiting your your inspiration and the creativity. Somehow you put in a wall there, you need to do this, and then you do some flow, does it? So
yeah, sure.
It's a nice point of view. I'm not thought of that way, but yes, you're absolutely right. Well, thank you very much for this conversation. This chat has been lovely.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
I hope I've got some left. So what I have to do now is read more of your stuff, follow you more, and then I have more things to prepare for.
Yeah, we're happy to do it again.
I'm really intrigued about what's going to happen with your next stories, because you said a few things. I'm like, I want to read now. So yeah, I hope that I will post all the links in the video as well. Normally I write an article about the interview too, because then I have my own thoughts, and I start, after the interview, you always think, oh, that, I never asked that. But then I will send you all the stuff. And if you want to send me links for people to see all your work, please do that, and I will help you as much as I can. And I hope you have enjoyed it too.
Very much, thank you. It's the first time I've seen Liam in about a year and a half. I mean, we speak to each other a lot, but I haven't physically seen him because of the lockdowns and everything.
Oh, well,
we should, to be fair, Lex, we should get together soon. Like, even if it's like an outdoor.
Yeah, we probably can. We can now, can't we? Six people, so we probably could do something actually.
We could go around that lake. Sorry. Okay. There's a lake between where me and
there is.
Yeah. And have a little wander if you want.
Yeah, we could do that.
You're making me jealous, because I can't do that. I can't go and meet you out there in a bar, because I'm in Spain, so I'm jealous. Right. So, well, thanks a lot, and I'll see you next time.
Yes, thank you.
Good luck with all your work, and it was great. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank
Bye-bye.
you. See you soon. Bye.